27 March 1945. Tinian, Mariana Islands, 2300 hours. The runway is black glass. A B-29 rolls into the night, oxygen hissing in masks, the navigator counting down to a coastline no one will see. Bomb bay doors open, and the bombs don't look like bombs. Steel cylinders with little parachutes step politely into the slipstream and vanish. Codename: Operation Starvation. They fall soft, fold their silk, and slip under. Magnetic, acoustic, pressure. 3 ways to know a ship is near without seeing it. Each mine arm's late, sleeps shallow, and waits. Pre-dawn, Shimonoseki Strait, Japan. The coaster noses into a channel it has sailed for years. Same buoys, same tide, same watch officer pacing the bridge. The wake curls bright behind the stern, then kinks, just a tremor, and the night lifts into a sheet of white. No periscope, no tracer, just the ocean deciding to bite. A mine war delivered by bombers. For months, Japan has run on water. Coal from Hokkaido, grain and ore from the Asian coast. Fuel creeping home through straits with names that sound like keys. Shimonoseki, Bungo, Tsushima. Submarines and carrier planes have hurt the routes. But the last arteries still pulse in narrow channels the fleet cannot sit on forever. So the planners ask a rude question. What if we close the sea at its narrowest points and turn every harbor mouth into an hourglass? Back on Tinian, the 313th Bomb Wing swaps incendiaries for parachute-retarded, influence-fused naval mines. Delays and sterilizers set so they arm at the right moment and die when their job is done. Crews fly low under cloud, radar painting coastlines on scopes, and stitch entrances to ports and straits with invisible teeth. The ocean does not look different. It behaves different. Within weeks, the Shimonoseki Strait, the inland sea's throat, goes from busy to nearly silent. Coasters hug dark coves, waiting for minesweepers. Convoys stack outside port limits, engines idling, while small wooden boats with paravanes write slow cursive across the tide. Some mines listen for screws and fire only for steel, ignoring the sweeps. Some wait for pressure. No wire can trick them. It works because it is boring in exactly the right way. No dogfights, no hero shots, just lanes plotted in dark rooms and drops time to seconds over buoys no one can see. Pilots put steel where the sea has no choice but to pass. By summer, the arithmetic turns brutal. Over 12,000 mines laid in more than 1,000 sorties, with few aircraft lost doing a job the enemy cannot see coming. Hundreds of hulls sunk or crippled, well over 1 million tons erased from ledgers. But the louder number is quiet. Imports collapse. Steel without coal is sculpture. Factories without cargo are buildings with lights on. This isn't a neat tale of a single weapon ending a war. It is a decision to move attention from cities to choke points, from burning what is made to stopping what lets it be made at all. The Navy provides the teeth. The Army's big bomber puts the teeth where water must flow. Stand on a breakwater in May 1945, and you can see the change on faces as much as on charts. Officers lean over minefield diagrams that never mattered before. Civilians on coasters stare at the water the way you stare at a dog that has stopped wagging. Minesweepers go first, and sometimes do not come back. The ocean learns to wait. And when oceans wait, empires miss their appointments. Tonight, we ride with one crew from Tinian into the Shimonoseki throat. How a harbor appears on a radar scope at night, and how a steel barrel with a silk tail turns water into a question every captain must answer before breakfast. Tinian, 27 March 1945, 1900 hours. Codename: Operation Starvation. Briefing room heat, chalk dust, a map with red pencil lanes across Japan's coasts. The target isn't a city. It's water with rules, choke points, turns, depths. The plan is simple, the way a lock is simple. Place the teeth right, and the sea must put its neck there. Each crew learns 3 numbers for every drop: depth, arming delay, and life. How long the mine will live before it quietly kills itself. Influence settings, magnetic, acoustic, pressure, are chosen for each lane. Magnetic hears the hull. Acoustic hears the screws. Pressure feels the ship's weight pushing water aside. The aim is not drama. The aim is that traffic does not move. Hangar row, 2100. Crates cough up steel cylinders with silk tails. Ordnance teams chalk stencils. Screw on nose assemblies. Dial the little clocks that decide when a harbor goes quiet. The bombardier's romantic sight gives way to a radar face. Tonight, the navigator and radar operator will do the aiming. The intervalometer gets a last tap. Walk the pattern down the channel in even steps. Taxi, 2250. The runway is a black ribbon in a warm wind. Big props bite. The bomber lifts. The island becomes a line of heat fading behind it. The ocean below is a continent of dark. Over water, 0100. No formation lights, no chatter. The crew becomes a list of jobs. The flight engineer rides the needles. The radio operator keeps the set quiet unless headquarters speaks. The gunners listen to engines and to the kind of silence that means nothing is wrong yet. Up front, the navigator measures a sky with no features and makes it have features anyway. Fixes from LORAN, winds from Dead Reckoning, a speed correction you only earn by flying this route too many times. Radar wakes the coast first. On the scope, a city is a white bruise, a headland a hook, a bridge a slash that shouldn't be there in the water. The radar operator talks the pilot toward a ghost harbor he can't see out the glass. Range rings step in. Bearings settle into a rhythm. The nose swings a degree, then half a degree. Outside is still black. Inside the scope, Japan is close enough to touch. Altitude settles low under the ceiling. Airspeed holds steady and quiet. This is not about sneaking. It is about being exact. Bay doors open and stay open. The radar navigator sets the aim so the first cylinder will enter on the uptide side of the dredged cut. The goal is not a pretty row. The goal is a decision every captain must make in the same 6-yard wide place tomorrow morning. The run. The intervalometer runs the math. Even steps down the lane so no captain can thread between them. Clock to 0. Mark. The first mine steps off. Parachute pops and steadies. The second follows on the interval. Then the third. A long, deliberate necklace the harbor cannot ignore. Over the bend, the depth changes. Settings in the crates back at Tinian had accounted for this. Over the entrance, the acoustic ears go in. Along the pierhead, the pressure listeners take their spots. One lane for coasters, another for deep draft ships, a few where sweeps must pass, set to ignore the wires and save their anger for engines. Flak lives here, but not loudly. Searchlights comb their own nerves and rarely find what they're looking for. A patrol boat guns its engine and goes the wrong way. Somewhere above the weather, fighters prowl in patterns that do not matter at midnight over a black sea. The bomber flies a straight line and lets steel do the hiding. Last one. The intervalometer finishes its count like a metronome that knows the song is over. Bay doors close. The pilot adds a little power. The nose comes off the coast and back into the open dark. On the scope, the harbor turns from a picture into a memory. On board, the airplane becomes a room where men breathe again. The engineer writes a number. The navigator draws a small X and then a line home. The radar operator tastes copper and swallows it. The radio stays quiet, then clicks once with a call sign that means the lane is laid. The sea below looks like it always did. Dawn will do the showing. Mines don't count themselves. They count ships. A coaster will follow its pilotage marks and meet a pressure wave it cannot bargain with. A minesweeper will cut a path that is not the path the mines are listening for. A freighter's degaussing won't fool a setting chosen to hear the engine instead of the hull. Some harbors will close without a sound. Some will shout once and then be shy for weeks. Back at Tinian, the debrief is 2 pages and a coffee. No claims. Just tracks flown, lanes walked, settings confirmed. A new red pencil line goes on the map around a strait that never mattered to the man in the tail gunner's seat until tonight. The operations board moves a marker to sortie complete. A schedule learns one word: again. By morning, a strait becomes a question mark, and every shipmaster has to answer it before breakfast. Shimonoseki Strait, first week of April 1945, dawn. Fog clings to the channel like wet gauze. A pair of wooden-hulled sweepers ease out. Paravanes fanned on steel wires. Engines talking in low voices. The coxswain keeps his eyes on the tide line, and the pilot marks bearings he has known since he was an ensign. 10 minutes in, a gull startles for no reason anyone can see. Then the water lifts once, without flame, just a hard white slap, and the wheelhouse glass turns to sand. On Tinian the same morning, a chalk hand draws a new square around the strait and writes one word: seeded. The pattern from there is not heroic. It is patient. B-29s return on schedules a harbor master could set his watch by. Nights apart, lanes walked again. Settings changed, so yesterday's trick won't work tomorrow. Mines with sterilizers age out on purpose, so the field can be reshaped without sending a diver. Sterilizers end a mine's life on schedule. Fresh drops refill the gaps. Fields can be reshaped without a diver. A strait that used to be a hallway becomes a moving maze whose rules keep changing while ships are at anchor. Traffic reacts the way a living thing reacts to pain. Coasters hide under capes and wait for sweepers. Convoys assemble in daylight and then refuse to depart when the sun goes down. Big ships trade one danger for another by going outside along coasts they never trusted in winter and try to slip past the choke at night. Pilots keep one finger on the engine telegraph and the other on the chart. A captain used to thread a turn by buoys. Now he threads it by doubt. The tools against it multiply and break. Magnetic sweeps hum and shudder. Degaussing coils burn power and patience. Oropesa, paravanes drag wires through dredged cuts and bring up nothing because acoustic ears don't answer to wire. Hammering sleds try to shout mines awake. Some mines don't listen to shouting. They feel weight, and weight only arrives with a hull. A lane that tests clean at noon can kill at dusk, because the sea's rules are what changed, not just the wiring. The harbor approaches are no longer places. They are conditions. By late April, the silence is measurable from a desk. Import ledgers show coal from Hokkaido arriving late or not at all. Ferries across the inland sea carry fewer rail cars. A steel mill runs its furnaces at a shy glow because the ore came, the coke did not. The Navy moves escorts like bandages and discovers there are never enough bandages for a body that works by sea. Maps begin to lie on purpose. Old coast pilots, the little books that tell you how to round a point or cross a bar, become dangerous literature. New sketches appear with red penciled no-go cuts, with times of tide when a good pilot might risk a run, and hours when even a brave man would not. Some harbors learn to breathe on a rhythm, open after a sweep, shut themselves by noon with one bad sound, empty again only when a different crew swears the water is clean. The airplanes keep the rhythm because rhythm is the weapon. One sortie reseeds a bridge approach with magnetic listeners. The next salts the pierhead with acoustic. The third lays pressure across the bend, where every helmsman takes one extra spoke of rudder. The intervalometer walks the beads. The radar walks the coast. The mine clocks do the rest. It isn't that explosions multiply, it's that intentions shrink. Captains stop promising arrival times. Clerks stop promising cargoes. Schedules forget how to keep their word. There are flashes of drama, and they all look the same in the dark. A freighter turns a corner and opens a new hole in the sea. A sweeper's stern rises without warning, and then is not there. A tug ties up to a buoy and unties in a hurry, because the buoy is not where the tug's father said it would be. Lights on the headland flicker as a city tells itself the problem is temporary and goes to bed early when it is not. On Tinian, the debriefs stay small and cold. Fuel burned, lanes walked, bearings flown, acoustic over the entrance, pressure along the pier. The operations board learns a litany of names that never mattered to aircrew before. Bungo, Ki, Tsugaru, names that used to be waypoints and now read like throats. The measure they care about isn't counted in wrecks. It's counted in ships that never left. By May, the silence has a shape you can feel from the air. At night, fewer wakes draw white lines through harbor mouths. Radar paints less movement in the coves, where coasters slept before dawn departures. The long inland lanes that used to twinkle like bead chains between islands show gaps. A bomber crew can tell the difference between a city conserving power and a city waiting for coal that didn't come. In the towns along the water, people learn new habits. Men with clipboards walk the breakwater and do math they dislike. Boys bicycle to the head of the bay and count ships that will be there again tomorrow. Fishermen turn their engines at idle and listen to the bottom the way they listen to weather. The way you listen to a dog that has stopped wagging. Minesweepers get names children recognize, and funerals get quiet. The ocean isn't closed. It is hesitating, and hesitation punishes a sea power faster than shells do. The fleet can fight convoys. The fleet cannot fight absence. A weapon that waits turns every tide into a question, and every question into a delay. Delays stack like crates. Crates don't turn into rifles or rails. By summer, hesitation spreads faster than fire, because a coast that hesitates stops moving. Inland Sea, mid-April 1945. Morning watch. The first answer to invisible teeth is always a broom. Two wooden-hulled sweepers edge out at slack water. Oropesa paravanes kiting on wire. Winches whining. Crews in cork vests. A lieutenant puts a pencil on a chart and says the word everyone wants to believe. Cleared. Behind him, a convoy forms and waits for permission to trust water. The tools come in families. LL magnetic loops hum. SA acoustic beaters thump. Oropesa paravanes kite on wire. Magnetic. LL sweeps unspool copper and send current to paint a moving magnetic field, trying to fool minds that listen for a hull. Degaussing coils wrap big ships in counter-magnetism. Engineers curse at voltmeters and tide tables. Sometimes the sweep pops a harmless bubble and the crew cheers. Sometimes nothing happens, because the minds tonight aren't listening for steel. Acoustic. Hammer sleds thump the sea. Sound generators tow like stubby torpedoes and shout at the dark. Some minds count holes. ignoring the first two, waking on the third. If the lane holds pressure, listeners or ship counters, it stays quiet and lets courage collect at the harbor mouth. Contact and wire. Paravanes drag cutting blades through dredged cuts, hoping for moored mines. The blades come back clean. The lane is cleared on paper. But influence mines aren't on wires. They're on rules. Fields change because the airplanes change them. One night lays magnetic listeners across the uptide bend. The next salts the pierhead with acoustic. The third walks a row of pressure in the slot, where every helmsman adds a spoke of rudder. Sterilizers time mines out on schedule. Reseeding fills the gaps. Delays arm late, so a sweeper's morning wakes nothing, and a coaster's dusk wakes everything. Fields breathe on a schedule. Arm, wait, expire, reseed, shift, repeat. A clean lane at noon can kill at dusk, not because a wire grew back, but because the rules did. The harbors fight back with math and nerve. Pilots stand on breakwaters with stopwatches, watching sweepers drag patterns, guessing which turns a minefield will prefer. Captains throttle to odd speeds to dodge acoustic triggers. Engineers change shaft RPM to move out of a mine's hearing. Barges creep inshore on oars, hugging rocks and prayer. Wooden hulls are drafted because wood is quiet, until a pressure mine reminds everyone that silence still displaces water. Losses teach faster than manuals. A sweeper vanishes stern, first where yesterday's sweep said safe. The next crew lengthens its wire and shifts an hour on the tide. A freighter clears the entrance and dies beside the pier, so tomorrow the sweep is reversed. Out first, in last. A buoy every man has used since he was an ensign becomes a rumor. Old coast pilots turn treacherous. Margins fill with pencil warnings and tide notes. Up in the bomb bays, the answers are boring, which is why they work. Navigators walk the same lanes again with different settings. Intervalometers step drops, so no master can thread the beads. Pressure mines go where a dredge cut narrows the water. Acoustic go beside dock walls that bounce prop noise back into a stronger echo. Magnetics sit on the deep side of bends where big ships must pass. Nothing is clever. Everything is accurate. The result isn't an explosion count. It's a behavior change. Convoys depart late and arrive undefined. Rail cars pile up because ferries don't trust the crossing. Coal that once moved like blood now moves like rumor. The Navy pulls escorts from one throat to save another and finds both tighter by evening. Schedules stop keeping their promises. There are brave, technical fixes, and they work until they don't. More current on the LL sweep. Heavier acoustic beaters. Double paravanes in the cut. A checkerboard route that trades one danger for three small ones. Mines answer with ship counters and multiple influences. Wake the lane with noise, then wait for weight. Ignore the first hulls and choose the one that matters. A mine doesn't argue with a theory. It listens for its condition and obeys. Fuel and wire run low. Crews run thin. Auxiliary sweepers, coasters with borrowed gear, drag in places designed to be dragged and still bring nothing up because nothing is there to bring. The mines are down and thinking in simple ways. Not this, not yet, now. Each day, cleared, sounds smaller. Each night, the map feels older than the water beneath it. Some answers come from ashore and cost as much as ships. Cargo shifts to smaller craft, to bays no one has used in a decade, to nighttime only, to brave pilots who will take a pressure bend at dead slow because someone must. Traffic slides to outside routes along weather coasts where winter owns the chart. The sea takes its tax in hulls, and in hours, and in nerve. By June, the inland pattern looks like a heartbeat with missed beats. Straits that once pulsed, regular, now stutter. A staff officer draws a graph and says the quiet part aloud. We're not merely sinking ships. We're starving movement. The number of wrecks matters. The number that never sailed matters more. From the cockpit, the change is visible in the absence of light. At night, fewer wakes write cursive across the approaches. Radar paints less motion in coves that should glitter before dawn. Cities that once dimmed for air raid discipline now dim because coal didn't come. Mines don't need to own the ocean. They only have to make it hesitate, because hesitation, multiplied by tide tables and hunger, bleeds an island nation faster than fire. March-August 1945. Inland Sea and its throats. War keeps two books, one for noise, one for results. Operation Starvation wrote mostly in the quiet one, what it bought. Aerial mines turned choke points into switches. When the switch flipped, imports collapsed. Coal that fed furnaces and rail, ore for steel, kerosene and fuel oil. Everything that moved by short coastal hops began to miss its appointments. Inland sea ferries carried fewer rail cars. Mills banked fires. Cities dimmed for reasons that had nothing to do with sirens. On staff maps, the bright pulse of coastal traffic faded to a thready line. The fleet had long punished ships at sea. Now the sea itself punished schedules. How little it cost to change the curve. By August, 12,000 plus mines in 1,000 plus sorties, with very few aircraft lost. Damage driven by accuracy, not attrition. The bomber did what big bombers do best: fly far, repeat exactly, and leave the enemy arguing with physics instead of tactics. A mine that never exploded was not a failure. It was a decision a shipmaster didn't risk making. Where the numbers hide. Explosions are an easy metric and a misleading one. The louder measure was tonnage that never sailed. Ledgers began to lie in the useful direction. Promised cargoes crossed out. Rail schedules rewritten to pretend the ferry would come tomorrow. Port pilots started using words they had never needed in routine entries. Uncertain, delay, risk. That language was victory, what it broke beyond steel. The fields pulled escorts away from convoys they were meant to guard. Sweeper squadrons burned fuel and courage on lanes that changed by rule, not by wire. The coastal fleet, small, old, necessary, took losses it could not replace. Tugs, lighters, wooden coasters, harborcraft, the low-glamour vessels that knit an island economy. Even when hulls survived, ours did not. Days stretched, stockpiles shrank. Factories learned the color of an idle light. What it could not do. Mines did not stop everything. They did not silence fishing fleets or barges hugging rock at dead slow. Bad weather could smudge radar pictures and make drops sloppy. Mine clocks sometimes aged out early or refused to wake. Shallow estuaries offered workarounds. Brave pilots and smart sweepers stole back water one channel at a time. A weapon that waits is strongest where the sea narrows and weakest where it frays into coves. Ethics by another name. This wasn't metaphor. Closing ports starves movement, and movement feeds cities. Fewer bombs on roofs, more days when cargo never reached a quay. Why it scaled. Everything about the method loved repetition. Crews learned lanes until they could fly them as a tune. Sterilizers let fields expire on schedule. Reseeding let planners reshape without divers. Influence fuses, magnetic, acoustic, pressure, could be mixed and counted. Some mines woke to sound, others to weight, others to the third hull instead of the first. Intervalometers walked beads down a channel no helmsman could thread. Accuracy not novelty, drove damage. What the other side learned, and too late. Counter moves improved. Heavier LL current, better acoustic noisemakers, longer wires on paravanes, checkerboard routes that traded one danger for three small ones. But mining changed the rules, so cleared lanes were often true only today. Mines that delayed arming let morning sweepers write a clean report, and an afternoon coaster write a will. The most dangerous weapon in a harbor became the one a pilot believed was gone. The bill after midnight. Post-war, the same quiet success turned into noisy work. Clearance took years. Maps grew hedged notes. Small craft vanished in waters everyone thought were safe again. That is part of the ledger too. A weapon that keeps its promise until somebody goes and asks it to stop, one hazard at a time. The line that matters. Set aside the poetry and look at the curve. Aerial mining denied the enemy freedom of movement at the price of very few bombers, and it did so where bombs and torpedoes rarely reach, inside the habit of sailing. It punished an island nation at the joint between sea and shore, quietly, predictably, and faster than factories could adjust. The sea was never closed, only turned into questions. And when answers are late, wars run out of steam. July 1945, Tsushima Strait, night. The lane is marked cleared at dusk. By midnight, a convoy noses out anyway. 2 small tankers, 3 coasters, an escort that looks too thin in the dark. Engines keep their voices low. Pilots count seconds on turns. A gull wakes on a buoy, and no one likes the omen. Half a mile past the last light, the third hull in line finds the rule the sweep missed. No flame. Just a hard white rise, a slap of air, and a tanker that suddenly does not answer her rudder. Ship counter. The first 2 were a courtesy. The third was the reason the field exists. Charts say, cleared. The water says, not tonight. The pattern thickens because planners make it thick. Fields are not bigger, they are smarter. Pressure along the bend, where every helmsman adds a spoke. Acoustic beside key walls that throw prop noise back like a mirror. Magnetic on the deep side of the dredged cut, where big draft must pass. Sterilizers retire old teeth on schedule. Reseeding moves the bite. Cleared at noon, questioned by dusk, lied to by midnight. Names that used to be rails on a chart become throats you can feel with your teeth. Shimonoseki, Bungo, Ki, Tsugaru. Coasters gather in coves and learn the new ritual. Wait for the broom. Wait for the report. Wait for someone braver to go first. Some nights, a harbor breathes. Out on the bell, in on the tide. Some nights, it holds its breath until morning and calls that safety. From the air, the change is visible in absences. Radar paints fewer moving dots between islands that once glittered like bead chains. Wakes don't write cursive across harbor mouths the way they did in spring. Cities dim, not for sirens, but for coal that did not come. On paper, the change is brutal without drama. Imports collapse. Ledgers cross out cargoes and invent tomorrows. Ferries carry fewer rail cars. Mill furnaces run shy. The coastal fleet bleeds where it is smallest. Tugs, lighters, wooden sweepers, men who know every buoy by nickname. Even when hulls survive, ours don't. Schedules stop keeping their promises and then stop making them. Sweepers get better, and the sea keeps changing the exam. LL current goes up. SA beaters thump harder. Double or a pieces kite on wire. Checkerboard tracks trade one danger for 3 small ones. Mines answer with delayed arming and multiple influences. Wake the lane with noise, then wait for weight. Ignore the first hull, choose the second, Let morning write clean, and afternoon write a will. The mind does not argue with theory. It listens for its condition and obeys. July slides into August, and hesitation spreads faster than fire. Convoys that would have sailed weather permitting now add water permitting. Harbor masters use words they were never trained to write: uncertain, delay, risk. A strait is open on the map and closed in the mind. A captain looks at a perfect patch of sea and does not trust it. Up in the bomb bays, nothing is new, and that is the point. The 313th flies the lanes the way a musician plays a riff. Exact, repeatable, unglamorous. Intervalometers walk the beads. Influence fuses do the listening. A steel cylinder with a silk tail drops into black water and turns into a question only ships can answer. By the last week of the war, the inland sea's pulse is thready. Traffic moves when it must, not when it wants. The islands still exist on charts. The lanes still have names. The sea is still the sea. But between name and place sits a weapon that waits, and waiting reaches places firebombs can't. There is no photograph that captures this. Only a map that looks tired, a schedule that looks honest, and a coast that goes to bed early because the ocean has started to think. And when water thinks, empires miss their appointments. September 1945. Cure approaches. Morning. The flag comes down. The mines stay up. 2 wooden sweepers shoulder into a gray swell. Oropesa kites on wire, winches whining the same tired song they sang in spring. On the bridge, a new officer wears a new armband. The chart is older than both of them. A penciled note says, "Believed cleared." The sea does not read. Peace changes the uniforms, not the rules. Allied sweep groups fan across the inland sea. Former enemy craft work under new orders. Wooden coasters get borrowed gear, and a warning no one likes to give. Tow slow, and don't trust what you trusted last year. LL magnetic loops hum. SA beaters thump. Paravanes cut empty water, because the killers here are influence. Minds that answer to magnetism, noise, or weight, not wire. Some clocks have saved lives. Minds with sterilizers die on schedule, just as planned. Others delay their first breath until after a morning sweep, then wake for the evening tide. A few count hulls. Polite to the first, patient with the second, fatal to the third. Paper says, channel open. Habit says, go slow. Memory says, maybe tomorrow. Charts learn to hedge. Old coast pilots, once recipes for routine, fill with cautious phrases. Reported safe, locally swept, danger unconfirmed. Buoys shift. Bars are resounded. Pilots draw dotted no-go cuts where dotted lines never were. A fisherman reads the water the way he reads weather. Some days he launches. Some days he looks at a calm patch and ties the line again. Clearance is measured in wire and hours, not headlines. A lane 30 cables long takes a week of patterns, a month of patience, and still ends in a note. Pass with caution. The quiet enemies are the pressure listeners laid across dredged bends and the acoustic hunters tucked beside key walls that throw prop noise back like a mirror. A team can drag a clean lane at noon and watch a coaster die at dusk because the rules changed, not the wire. Loss doesn't stop with surrender. Small craft vanish where everyone thought safe again. A tug, a lighter, a wooden sweeper with a name children knew. Funeral flags do not care about armistices. Mines that never fired during the war become post-war statistics, each one a delayed echo of a decision made on a runway far away. On land, the ledger keeps turning pages. Harbors reopen by increments. In on the bell, out after a sweep, closed when a note goes on the board. Rail cars creep back onto ferries. Mills turn furnaces from shy glow to steady orange. Coal returns. Not enough. Not on time. Schedules remember how to keep promises, then forget again when a chart writes unknown. A coast relearns its own map. In the debrief tents, the language stays small and cold. Miles towed. Loops energized. Beats per minute on the sled. Fines, none. Fines, 1. Cut and sink. The work reads like housekeeping, because that is what it is. Cleaning a war out of water, one condition at a time. From the bomber's side, the lesson is not louder for peace. A steel cylinder with a silk tail grew ears and waited where ships had to be. It denied movement at the joint between sea and shore, quietly enough to outlast gunfire and far enough inside habit that habit broke. Now the habit must be rebuilt by sweepers, by pilots, by men with pencils on keys who decide when to trust water again. Clearance will take years. Even then, notes will linger on charts like old scars. Wreck reported, explosion 1946, a void in northerlies. Minds do not need to own an ocean to own a decade. They only need to wait longer than memory does. The war is over. The questions it left in the water are not. Next, the last entry in the book. What Operation Starvation finally proved about air power, sea lanes, and why the quietest weapons often write the most permanent lines on a map. August 1945. 2 maps on one table. On the left, a bomber route. Tinian to a strait. Beads walked by an intervalometer. On the right, a shipping chart. Lanes that used to glow with pencil wakes, now crossed by cautious notes. Between them sits the lesson. Air power did not need to sink the fleet to hurt a nation built on water. It needed to move the fight from ships to sea lanes, from targets to habits. Aerial mines did what bombs and torpedoes could not do for long at the same risk. Reach inside the place where schedules live and make the water hesitate. What changed the curve? Access. Big bombers reached every choke point every few nights. No blockade line required. Shaping. Magnetic, acoustic, pressure. Mixed, counted, delayed, sterilized. Turned fields into rules, not wires. Repetition. Accuracy beat novelty. The same lanes, flown like a tune, altered behavior faster than new tricks did. Cost. Thousands of mines, thousands of sorties. Very few bombers lost. Damage by accuracy, not attrition. What it did to time. Explosions made headlines. Delays won the campaign. Hours slipped off schedules, then days. A factory could survive a raid and fail a week later because coal missed a ferry. A convoy could be cleared at noon and afraid at dusk. Mines didn't fight ships. Mines fought appointments. And appointments are how economies breathe. What it did to choice. Captains stopped promising arrivals. Harbor masters wrote uncertain in ledgers that used to be arithmetic. The Navy moved escorts like bandages and found both wounds open by evening. The enemy's smartest answer, sweeping, was also attacks on the very ships and fuel the mines were starving. What it did after the silence. Peace changed flags, not the math. Clearance took years. Charts learned to hedge. Small craft vanished where everyone thought safe again. A weapon that waits lasts longer than the day it was placed. It keeps time with tides and memory, not headlines. Why it mattered beyond one ocean. Operation Starvation proved that air power can deny sea power without meeting it in blue water. It showed that the cheapest precision sometimes wears a parachute and a stopwatch, not a bomb sight. It taught planners that the surest way to hurt an island nation is not to chase every ship, but to close the places ships must pass, quietly, predictably, and again tomorrow. It also wrote an ethical margin note in small, honest print. Fewer bombs fell on roofs because mines fell into harbors. But movement feeds cities. To close a strait is to thin a pantry. The choice wasn't clean. The result was real. Fewer air crews died. More calendars did. What remains true when the maps go back in the drawer? The ocean almost never closes. It hesitates. Weapons that wait punish habits, not just holes. The loudest numbers are often the wrong ones. Count what never sailed. Precision scaled by repetition is a strategy, not a stunt. If you want a picture for the history book, there isn't one. There's a B-29 bay door opening over black water. There's a steel cylinder with a silk tail stepping into the slipstream and vanishing. There's a harbor master standing on a breakwater at dawn, staring at a perfect patch of sea and choosing not to trust it. In March, the ocean started to listen. By summer, it waited. And when water waits, quietly, predictably, at the joints where maps meet tides, empires miss their appointments and wars run out of steam.